Okay, so here is the tea, cancel me, baby listeners. I leave you all. I leave for 2 seconds and I come back to inanimate, harmless objects. One would think, like Build-A-Bear, stuffed animal toys, and Bud Light beer, okay, being weaponized as tools of mass destruction. That is how psychotic our culture has truly become. Just think about it. It's like that's how crazy and how politicized everything has become. And with both of these, it has to do with this whole war right now, right? This ideological war of gender and identity. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of simulation did I actually sign up for? Like, may I please get a refund? I'm asking politely, okay? Because Build-A-Bear, Bud Light, none of them asked for this. They were just on their merry way. And here they are literally being used as political tools to attack one another. Who would have thought? And what actually is this shit? Okay. And like I said, this all has to do with the cluster right now going on with this issue, right? With gender, the clash of ideas, the clash of both sides. And where am I? But, good old Tennessee, where it feels like the middle of the crosshairs and the shit show, right? So, we're going to dive into this today because it is again, you can't even go to a tailgate. You can't even go to your local mall, Build-A-Bear without getting, bludgeoned. It is everywhere. And we're going to go somewhere today, as you may not expect. But I want to start just to put things a little bit in context and to give you plant the little seed in your minds of where I'm kind of going with this and kind of peeling back and looking at the bigger picture, because I feel like with all of this, we are truly, we're getting so in the weeds of everything being political and hostile and angry. And I get it. It's a really sensitive time. It's like, for people who don't experience periods, welcome to you thought, no, welcome. Okay. It is certainly a time, but I feel like we are missing what's actually important here. And so I want to talk about an experience that I had interviewing Blair White, who is in fact, one of the most prominent trans women alongside two others who I've also interviewed. And I've talked about Caitlyn Jenner and Gigi Gorgeous. But Blair White, this interaction I had with her really, stood out to me and really I feel pertained to everything that we're going to be talking about today, because she is, she's someone who's trans, but not really, depending on who you ask, right? Because she's a very prominent conservative. She's been on Joe Rogan. And so, as you would have it, it's like the Caitlyn Jenner effect, right? It's like, they're on the right, so they're not really trans. It's like, excuse me, I beg to differ. It's like I was up there in Blair White's boobs. Just look at underneath what is in the panties going on there. And I would beg to differ. I'm sure I did not see down there. I did see the boobs, where was very much close to them, was in their presence, and were very much a thing. We're very much like a prominent, moment to be seen, right? But I was at an event at YouTube, actually, the hub of it all in California. And it was this event actually for, the LGBT community, right? Very freeing, very fun, which again is why we're missing the bigger picture, what I'm going to get to with all this. But I asked them about sexual identity. I say innately we are all sexual beings, but we repress it. We shine a light on certain parts of it that we pick and choose. Funny enough, really quick sidebar, don't know if you guys saw this, but how about Vanity Fair running a piece on Candace Owens, which in my mind, because Vanity Fair is super, super left, virtue signaling almost in a way that Bud Light is, which I'm going to get to. But what have you? Talk about misconstruing sexuality. Then Candace Owens over here, who's the number one, you are not a woman who respects herself if you do not have a pot roast at 5 p.m. daily on the D, not on that D, on the D daily for your man. Okay. You are no woman to me. But here she is as an intern in Vogue, writing all these years ago about all this about anal, about all these things, what have you. So anyhow, I digress. back to Blair White. Okay. So I asked all of them, given that we do this with sexuality, what makes you feel? When do you feel most in your sexual power? Like, when are you just feeling yourself? Like, when I think about you, I touch myself vibes. And I love what she says, because she's like, when I'm naked in high heels with my man and a little bit tipsy. Like, the specificity is everything in life, but notice the naked and in the heels. It's like, ladies, you know me, you know this, and yes, you know me, but you know this and you feel me. That is, I feel like that so encapsulates like the power of being a woman, that men, like, as much as you can, like, sit here chilling with baseball caps backwards, cracking open a beer and pulling your dicks out, like, sure, free moment for you, but it's not quite the same as being naked in heels. But it's such a, it's something that's so specific to being a woman, right? And like, exactly what I'm talking about, and in that power. And I really loved that because of just that. I feel like it really captures that freeing femininity, uniqueness, right? And I have to tell you that looking back on these interviews with these people, it just brought, I mean, this was 4 years ago, right? And I had made a little compilation. It's still on my YouTube. And it brought such a smile to my face, because again, I feel like they really captured that freeing kind of like, here I am, take it as I, take it or leave it kind of joy, which is going to bring me to where we're all going to go with this, in this gender confusion, merry-go-round, Willy Wonka tunnel ride from hell. So keep that in mind, as we're talking about this today, because I really loved that. So Blair, shout out to you for that situation, because it rings true, all these years later. And again, like, even though I am by no means, which because I think it's so destructive and toxic in so many ways, which I'll talk about, but like the woke extremities of trans, and like the militant like orthodoxy of this is how it is, binary sex isn't real, like blah blah. This is where it's like, okay, like, let's acknowledge that they absolutely deserve the respect and acknowledgement and the freedom in that identity that they're choosing, and like how great it is to be a woman, like with Blair explained, with her boobs on my head, mine on hers, about being tipsy with her man in heels. Like, you go, girl. And that's, again, like what comes with being a woman and not a man. So sorry to all of you. Okay, so speaking of something that is a hot button topic, again, like the beer cans at my Penn State tailgate when I was singing to the top of my lungs, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, like a hot mess with my extensions falling off my face. Did not ask for this. They did not ask to be dragged into this. No pun intended, because we're getting to the drag queen chaos after this. Okay. So what have we here but a very prominent trans influencer, again, trans woman, Dylan Mulvaney. Okay, so Dylan is getting a lot of heat right now because they documented their 1-year process of doing all the surgeries and becoming a woman, right? So to commemorate this, by the way, she is racking in the sponsorships, honey, like it's literally actually a thing. I'm like, Mom, can you Venmo me today $5 for my coffee? We good? Like, you're my best sponsor. You got my back. No, but like all like hotels, right? Nike, which has come under fire, and probably most prominently Bud Light. So what Bud Light did was send Dylan a personalized can with her face on it. It's not for sale. It's just something that they say that they do to bring in influencers and yada, yada, and celebrate them, right? So Dylan posted to her story, and it's all in the spirit of March Madness, like beer and sports, am I right? And Dylan goes on this thing with Bud Light. Okay, so it causes this whole uproar, specifically from uptight conservatives. I don't know. I don't really know at this point how else to put it, right? Even Caitlyn Jenner actually spoke out about this, but in terms of the Nike campaign, which I'm going to get to in a hot minuto, okay? So perhaps like the most off the rails, because now they're saying like boycott Bud Light and all this and that, and probably like the most like deranged exhibition of this feeling was none other than Kid Rock, who decided like probably like in my backyard for all I know, right here in Nashville, lined up all of these like Bud Light beers and is wearing a MAGA hat. And this is where, again, it's like, I've talked before about right wingers like playing into their stereotype. And like, this is where y'all don't do yourselves any favors. Like, the mainstream media is jerking off to this happily, like Jergens in hand and all. Like, you are just giving them, the golden ticket that, they've been waiting for all this time. So, and no, that is not meant to be some sort of, reference to a children's movie. Like, I'm a pedophile. Relax. Okay. We're getting to Build-A-Bear in a second. So Kid Rock decides to line these all up. He's wearing his MAGA hat and he's like, hey, Bud Light, takes out basically like a semi-automatic, I'm not a gun expert, but takes out and blows them all away. And then he's like so hostile in the camera, flips the bird and is like, F you, Bud Light, right? Again, this is where, listen, I hope I'm dying to interview Kid Rock. Can you imagine like Kid Rock stepping into the cancel me baby domain, like talk about off the rails? And even people I've met here who know him personally, he goes by Bobby. Not sure if you know this fun fact, but they're like, oh, good old Bobby, like, fucking Bobby over there, right? And this, I feel like, it's just like, why? Like, even Howard Stern was like, who I don't a lot of the times agree with as of late, RIP to the shock jock sitch. Like, we could definitely use that, I feel like, right about now in some ways, but it's like, who hurt you? Like, are you well? Because it's actually a little deranged and it's super aggressive. And this is an instance where I could actually see people arguing like this is actually inciting and riling people up to be more hostile, hateful, perhaps violent towards trans people. It's like, just why? Like, why are you so mad? Why are you so mad? Like, switch to Coors Light. It's not that big of a deal. But the funny twist is he then promoted, I think it's called Happy Dad beer or something, who also in the past had partnered with Caitlyn Jenner. So it's like, where's the lie? Like, this is where it all just, again, falls in on itself and is like the scavenger hunt from hell, right? And it's like funny and also super sad. And this is where, and I'm in a moment, I'm going to just do a sidebar on the, horrific shooting that happened here in Nashville, because sadly, it has been exploited into this largely trans issue that, again, I feel misconstrues or exaggerates like what's really going on both sides, with misplay. There's a lot going on there. We're going to get to that in a second, right? But this is where also it's like, yes, the right doesn't do itself any favors like this, like calling for a whole boycotting of Bud Light, outrage, yada, yada. But also I feel like, the left and the mainstream don't do actually, the trans community, in my opinion, any favors, because I feel like again, the Kid Rock thing, okay, an exception, but I feel like they instill so much fear and paranoia because the way that they paint it, it's like they're constantly being under attack, abused, like I read something, in MSNBC today, it was like, there's a trans genocide, like all this. And this is why people get pissed who are level-headed, because it's like, okay, are they marginalized? Are they hurt? Are they abused? Could you imagine the torture of even being trans and coming out to your own family? Like, that 100% is all real. But this is why people get pissed, because they'll brush under the rug the realities of kids who frankly shouldn't be making these irreversible lifelong decisions, and the repercussions of that. Like, they'll underreport, they'll misreport all that, and the realities of all that, and leaving parents out of the mix. So either way, like, both sides just exaggerate and pander, as I've said, and like really don't do not only the community, they don't do Build-A-Bears any justice, they don't do Bud Light and most importantly, like I said, in all seriousness, the trans community any justice, right? In my opinion. So so Nike, Dylan's thing with Nike, this pissed Caitlyn Jenner off because someone had pointed out that Allison Felix, who is I believe she's a Black, basically multiple time Olympic winner. And basically Nike did her real dirty because she got pregnant and they didn't give her like she had a huge sponsorship with them and they didn't like have her back at all. They paid her like 70% less. They were like, if you can't perform after your pregnancy like you used to, we're going to drop you. Just like all kinds of like doing her wrong. And that's why Caitlyn Jenner was pissed, because she's like, okay, so like we're going to roll out the carpet for Dylan, who's been a woman for a year, which like, if you want to celebrate that, like that is great for you. As you all know, it is no secret. Like, I think it is fucking great being a woman. Like, here I am in my tube top, you know, my nails are done for you all. I have an Elwood vibe going. I even changed up. Like, I'm no makeup guru. I do the same thing every day. I even, in the spirit of this, I'm wearing like a pop of a brand new pink lipstick for you. Like, it is divine to be over here, you know, as a woman. But Caitlyn Jenner's like, this ain't right. And again, this is coming from a trans woman. And I respect people like her and Blair White. Like, even though Caitlyn Jenner had the balls or lack thereof to walk away from me because she was mad at me in an interview in LA, but I digress. I've told that story before, because it takes balls to stand up. Again, me doing this show, it takes balls to stand up not only to your own, but to like the behemoth that is the way to properly think and what have you. So back to Bud Light, okay? So an interesting take that I saw was from my friend Connor Moore, who I've been on his show. He's been on mine. He used to host a show, Politically Homeless. I think, Connor, you're in the middle of a rebrand right now, but nonetheless, very great hot takes over there on Connor's you know, cubicle. And he made a really good point about this, talking about how when Dylan Mulvaney had the Bud Light can, right? Like I said, in spirit of March Madness, funny enough and sad enough, it sort of played up this like male stereotype about women, that women are like retarded when it comes to sports. Okay. And she's like, you know, March Madness, something with basketball. I don't know anything about it, but like, go both teams. I hope everyone wins. Go sports. And Connor made a good point of being like, is that not annoying and sexist to like do something? Like, it's like, I get it. You were a guy a year ago, and clearly like some things of how men think clearly are still in there and have not made their way out onto the surgery table, because it's almost like a slap in the face, insinuating like, right, I'm going to play up this dumb woman role. Like, we don't know anything about sports, when that we all know, like, that can't be further from the truth, right? Like, I've loved some of the highlights of my career have been interviewing female athletes, because they're just bosses, like Nikki Bella, who I recently interviewed here in Nashville, right? And she talked all about like, in such a classy way, like wrestling, it is the guy sport, like in their tidy whiteys and all, like wrestling is like the dude's game, right? And she has like changed that forever for women. And I love what she said, how it's like, yeah, I'm a woman doing it, but like throw me in with the boys. I want to compete in the guys' game, but also like I am a woman over here. So very cool. And another one was Riley Gaines, who I interviewed, you know, when I first moved to Nashville. And Riley also, like, a little sidebar on this, but this is again where it's like, I don't even want to say the left, but the woke extremists go so far, because this was just a few days ago, but she was in San Francisco at a school speaking about, similarly to what she said on my show, right? How trans and women's rights collide, and how a lot of women's rights are being stepped on, because it's like, why is a trans person's, a woman's or experience or feelings, why does that supersede a biological woman, right? And again, things that are overlooked, I feel like the reality, you know, I said this on a panel recently, but the reality of, you know, spaces that were sacred, created for women, right? Whether it be, you know, housing or sports like this, because who can compete with like 5'2" me cannot compete even with a 5'8" biological dude, never mind a 6 pushing 3 like Caitlyn Jenner, when I literally came up to her tits, my eye level, all these things. And Riley was, you know, in preserving that, right? Because there's the reality in that. And I think what people fail to grasp while I'm on this is, because I've been listening a lot to like the J.K. Rowling podcast, and there are women many who experience, like, I talk about like the past and before women had equal rights and things like that, but even like as of late, like if they're abused or not given help or all these things, like marginalized, like based on being a woman, and that's their lens and that's their life experience, right? So like trying to find asylum and safety from all that is important. And then it's like when you throw them in the mix with someone who, say you're in a prison or wherever you are, and someone's who is a woman but has a penis still or is a biological man, like that could be very threatening, right? And it's like you can't say that, but it's like, again, this is where the mainstream gets itself in trouble because they so fiercely back it in the name of like right doing that they brush all that stuff under the rug, right? But all that goes to say, Riley was like viciously attacked, screamed at, physically, verbally attacked. There's video, she took video, there's video of it, and that in my mind is just unacceptable and just shows how like heightened and toxic and harmful this whole thing has become, when in the end, like it really doesn't have to be this way, right? For either side. But all that goes to say, women in sports, like it is okay. I mean, I personally, I know a thing or two about sports. Okay. Like I'm no Aaron Andrews, right? But you will see me hooting and hollering for my Patriots on any given day. Like you go to a sports bar here in Nashville and the women are just on the edge of their seats, right? Sipping their beers, Bud Light or not, just as much, like screaming at the ref, screaming at the mascot, just as much as the dude next to her. Like, so all that goes to say, to insinuate, it just playing into that thing, it just shows like maybe you still have the mindset of a dude thinking women know nothing about sports, and it's also just obnoxious. But where do I fall on it? I honestly think that it is Bud Light virtue signaling. And that's what I think, to be real with you. And they'll say like, this is what we do to include other people, but I just think it's straight up virtue signaling. Again, just like them incorporating, this prominent trans woman, just like Vanity Fair running a piece on like Candace Owens, like blowing smoke up her ass. I'm like, I'm sorry. This is literally just to refute anyone who, because I get Vanity Fair's notifications, and it's literally like a hex circle to destroy Donald Trump. It's all they fucking care about in this life. So I feel like doing stuff like this is like, see, no, we showcase all sides to like save face. And it's like, bullshit, right? So that's how I feel. I feel like it's virtue signaling. And I feel like if you're Dylan, who's, laughing their way to the bank and having a good old time, what are you supposed to do? I would take the money. I would be like, here is the can. It will be in my shrine. I will funnel it later. And guess what? When you watch me funnel it, I'm going to charge an extra $200 per person for that. Like, what are you going to do? Can you blame them? I can't. Like I said, I think it's good old virtue signaling at its finest, while the mainstream is like, this is just like an FU to society because, trans people are so harmed and they need to be given their spotlight. And again, like I've said, a degree of that is true, but this is where like the right misconstrues so much, because I've seen so many of them be like, oh, trans people are so suppressed. I'm not hopping over and getting, however, $1 million deals from Nike and this person and that person. And it's like, okay, obviously like they'll generalize, right? Like this person does not represent every trans person that ever existed, right? So a really quick sidebar before we get to the fun light drag queen situation, right, is the shooting that just happened here in Nashville. And I just want to acknowledge this because, again, this is where I'm not even going to get into the gun debate side of it. I've talked about it a little bit before, and I posted something to my Instagram about it. And I know it's such a complex issue, and, I'm not even going to get into that, but let's just focus right now on how this has been politicized when it comes to trans as well, right? Because the shooter who killed 9-year-olds in a Catholic school was a trans man, a woman, yes, I believe, who identified as a man, yes, Audrey Hale. And, again, this is where both sides, like when it pertains to this, to me, are completely disgusting, because the right will do what they do, right? Which is, blame this, like all trans people are wrong and sick and deranged, and this is what happens when you're doing, hormones and this and that. Like I've literally even seen memes, like, how people do their pronouns, he, him, of the shooter being dead on the ground after, they were killed, and the pronouns are like were. And it's like, this is what happens, you know? And again, it's like the Kid Rock thing. It's just like, and it's like, it just riles people up, and it's like, okay, we know that that's not true. Like, seriously, what about the Asian or Black or white shooters or all this or that? It's like, seriously, like, as if all trans people are sick and deranged, like, again, to push their political agenda, right? The left is equally as sick, in my opinion, because they almost will victimize this person, right? Almost excuse. It's like, well, why is our society, you know, so bad towards trans people that they would act out this way, and almost like empathize and victimize. Even it's funny, I was in an Uber and the driver and I were talking all about this, and he was like very level-headed. He's like, I'm here from Tennessee, but I was raised by leftists and, you know, liberals. And he's like, you know, I think trans people should be celebrated and given their rights and, you know, be free to live their lives. And I agree. But he's like, I guess he said like the Capitol, when naming the victims or like counting the victims, included the shooter. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. That's where we draw a line. Like, we do not glorify or victimize someone who would literally go in and murder 9-year-olds in cold blood. Like, I don't care who you are. And what we've learned, and I've said this before, is this sickness that we're seeing right now comes in all shapes, colors, sizes, genders, this, that. And that's how far that they'll literally go. It's like, no, it stops there. Like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to victimize that evil today. I don't care who you are. Right. So that's that on that. Okay. So now, before we get to the drag queens, at last, not to be a drag, but I felt like, you know, I had to address that in some way, shape, or form, because I will say things are very tense here. I don't know how closely you guys are following it, but there's also, you know, stuff going on with the representatives here in Tennessee. It's a whole thing, right? But it's very tense here. But again, we're gonna be all right. And one way we're gonna be all right, I'm gonna bring it to my buddy Magic Mind. I have it held up here. You know, it is no Bud Light, you know, but I think it gives it a run for its money, if I do say so myself. This is Magic Mind. I love it so much. I talked about it in my last episode, but you guys know I'm a caffeine freak in the sheets, and Magic Mind to me has been like my little gift from the gods. It's a little shot. You can have it with or without caffeine. I'll have it in the morning, right? With or without. And it is just like, you are focused. It's like you are taking the LSATs like Elle Woods, and you could go all day long. Okay. And you're going to score. You're definitely going to score above Warner and everybody else. Okay. Because you have just like a focus. You don't have jitters. You have that drive. Like, I definitely notice a little pep in my step when I take it. So you guys can all thank me later. Okay. You're going to go to magicmind.co. You're going to use the code cancel me baby. You're going to get all, you know, you're going to get discounts. You're going to get gifts from me. It's not even your birthday. So there you go. Let the church sing amen. Okay. Magic Mind for the win. So, okay, to the drag queen. So speaking of the shit show here in Tennessee, another heightened topic right now is that there is legislation that is trying to be passed against basically drag queens performing in public or anywhere where kids can see them, right? And again, both sides having an absolute field day with this, right? Like the Ben Shapiro's of it all are like, here we go. Like this cult corrupting your 3-year-old by, you know, having them motorboat a drag queen. It's like, give me, relax, lighten up. You know, you'd have a good time at a drag queen show, you know, just like I did rewatching those interviews earlier of them, not drag queens, but the trans and gays, like living their lives. Like you could have a good time with them over there, right? It's like, seriously. And the thing about the legislation that's so ridiculous is that it's so sneaky how it does it. It's like, no, you know, strippers, exotic dancers, go-go dancers, and people who dress in the opposite sex. It's like, seriously, like drag queens and strippers can be put in the same category. Are you for real right now? Right. So you guys are ridiculous. Like, get a life. Also how hypocritical, because again, this is coming from the same people who, I've said this before, who all day long are like freedom of speech, freedom of this, because while yes, the militant woke Nazis who, you know, have to control everything. Otherwise, like you're a sick human, when in fact, like they're fucking sick, have a chokehold on, you know, culture and society and what we say and how that's not okay. Yes, I understand. But if you're gonna let freedom ring, dude, then do that and like let the drag queens have their fun, like snatch their wigs but then toss it up in the air and swirl it around and have a good time. Like it's like if that's what you want, then give it back, right? Within bounds, of course. And of course, the left is seeing this as a complete and utter attack. And understandably, they're like, well, this is a slippery slope, right? Because like if you start saying you can't do this in public, it's like, what's next, right? So I'd agree with that. So in spirit of not, I don't know exactly the timeline because this is unfolding and it was blocked by a federal court. So because it was already supposed to happen, I think end of March, but it was blocked. So we're waiting to see how it plays out. But Build-A-Bear came out with a RuPaul bear. And again, the right is losing its mind. Like I saw memes on the Daily Wire, a la Kid Rock, like a bulldozer going over the Build-A-Bear. It's like, dude, relax. Also, it is a fucking teddy bear. It is a teddy bear with a wig and a dress. How would you even know what the gender? How would I know? I'm a 30-year-old woman. I am not going to sit here and be like, it's a bear. I'm not going to sit here and be like, what is the gender identity and, journey and political motivation of this bear? Like, give me a break. These people are acting like they're handing out the bear with like a dildo for a 5-year-old. It's like, seriously, it's a stuffed animal. Like, calm down, right? But what I want to say with all of this, also, I will never forget the time that I was in the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles, okay, at this event. Jay-Z and Beyonce were right behind me. And this is after we all know he cheated. So she is on her rebound. She is living her life. She is like, I am here to be free and I'm not giving a fuck. Okay. Speak about bulldozer. Like I almost ran Jay-Z over with 2 seconds ago, right? Like she's here for the moment. So she's sitting right behind me at the table right behind me. And there are these whole drag queen performances of Beyonce songs. I have the video. I can probably unearth it if you want, but I was smiling ear to ear, living my best life, right? As was she. Because, and this is where I'm getting to with all of this, I feel like we could actually learn, all of these things sadly have become political, like I said, tools, attacks. And the truth is, I actually feel like we could learn a lot from these people, right? This is, creativity and art and performance. And in terms of trans as well, right? It's like exploring sexual identity and having the courage to do that, right? And to do that out in the open and to do it freely. And, we could all, like I said, we could all learn a lot from that. Like, especially Ben Shapiro, like I will pay for you to get a lap dance from a drag queen. Like you will have a great time. I am sure of it. Right. Because it's sort of like every now and then I'll reference like the old school gays, and that's what it is. It's this sort of, it's infectious. It's this liberation, right? That makes you feel free because they're so sure of themselves, even though they're like, this may not be right to a lot of people, may not be the status quo. Like, fuck it. Like I'm living my life and it's contagious. Like you can't not feel that. But further, specifically with the drag queen situation, right? And even with trans, right? Because a lot of the times we hear about trans women more than men, but notice how with both of these, it's people channeling femininity and being a woman, right? Because that's what it is. Like here I am in my tube top, all 5'2" of me, loud and proud to say it. And I say this a lot on the show, but it's like, that is what womanhood is. It's fun and it's freeing. And it's like what Blair White said, like being nude in heels. Like you are not seeing drag of dudes because again, no, like you simpletons, I love you, but how far is that going to get you? Like, again, it's like cracking open the beer on a John Deere truck and we're calling it a day, drag for the win. No, but women are so multifaceted and dimensional and sexy and powerful and fun in a way, and men are too, right? I'm not here to diss the men, but in a way that men totally are not. And that's where, I think that we really have to get back to that, like we've lost sight of it. It's like, get back to what matters, get back to like where the joy comes from, this, why these people do it, why they feel joy in channeling a woman and how exciting and multidimensional that is. And also like with all of this becoming so political, like literally whether it be a stuffed goddamn animal or a fun drag performance, or a beer, it's like, it's these political tools and this arguing and this fighting and losing sight of the truth. It just makes us all lose not only like the womanhood and what's so great about it, but also the humanity. Like in the end, we're all human and we're all figuring it out. And in terms of sexuality, like obviously it means something different for all of us, hence the question I asked the YouTubers 4 years ago that I talked about in the beginning of this show. Like it means something different to all of us, yet it's a commonality in all of us. And if we give each other the space and like also give these people kudos without weaponizing it one way or the other, as they deserve, because again, that takes courage to do it in our own day-to-day lives, never mind in an out of the box or unconventional or a very public way, right? So, let's go back to, the human of it all, whether it be a Bud Light, whether it be a Happy Dad, no dad bods. No, I'm kidding, guys. I'm not trying to diss you today. I love you too. But, let's get back to the fun and the spontaneity and the sexual liberation, right? And the human of it all. And I say chin chin with a beer to that. I'll see you next time.